Hey guys, in this tutorial we are going to be looking at how to create a game environment in Blender. Now what you'll see in front of you at the moment is Josh Nixon's website, and this is one here, the concept art that we're going to be using. So we're going to be making this in 3D and texturing it and preparing it for a game engine. This tutorial is designed for beginners in mind. We'll possibly have a more advanced tutorial later on. So bear in mind that we're not going to be going into very in-depth details. We're going to generally give you an idea of how we actually go about creating game environments and how to actually prepare them. So we'll be focusing on things such as the geometry, keeping things low poly, where to put your edge loops, where we can spare polygons, and where we should actually merge them together. We'll go into UVing. We'll be doing a lot of automatic UV unwrapping, as well as we'll be doing some manual UVing to get things to work the way we want, specifically for multiple UVs, which allow us to have, for example, a grunge layer on an object, as well as a seamless texture, which we'll use over a lot of objects in the scene. That way we can get a really high resolution detail without using up very much memory at all. And by using that grunge layer, of course, things actually look quite unique. Okay, so as I said, this is a concept by Josh Nixon. He has provided for us a file. If I bring over Photoshop, I'm using Photoshop CS6. In the resources, you'll find this file. This is the original, I think it's like a 3.5K or 4K texture, image size, and not bigger, yeah, 5000 by 3000 pixels. So as you can see, it's quite high resolution. We can zoom right into the details there and figure things out. So by all means, if you don't have the disk on hand, if you've lost it or for some reason, the file is available on Josh's website. Okay, so what we're going to be doing first is we are going to be going over this in Photoshop, and I'm going to be drawing over it and drawing where the objects are, just a quick sketch, just to give us an idea of how we're actually going to be building it. This is a good idea when you are creating game environments to decide where you want geometry and where you're just going to ignore the details. So on that note, we can actually think of these concepts as a concept. It is not set in stone. We don't have to have these blocks in the exact way that he's got them laid out here. It's just sort of like a design of this is where we're going to go. Okay, the other thing that we're going to be doing is after that we will be taking this into Blender, and I'll be showing you a quick introductory tutorial on modeling for games. Then after that we'll go into an introduction tutorial for texture painting for games. So I'll actually be using Blender's built-in texture painting tools for this tutorial. And later on in this tutorial we will actually go into using what's called the Harmony branch of Blender. So over here from graphical.org we have the Harmony branch, and this here basically allows us to have much better effects in the game engine. Namely, we will have some dynamic shadows, which really does look it looks a lot nicer having things dynamic, so we can actually move the sun around and have the shadows follow. So let's get right into it now. I'm going to open up Photoshop here. Now I am using Photoshop, but you can go ahead and use GIMP if you want to, or any other photo editing software. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a new layer. I'm going to be calling this one here Wall, and I'm just going to zoom in a little. Now, if you're wondering, I am using a Intuos 4 graphics tablet by Wacom. You don't need one of these. You can actually do this on a bamboo tablet or even a mouse if you want. I would recommend a tablet. You can actually get tablets for about $50, which is not too expensive. Okay, so on this wall layer, what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to trace out our outlines. So for this, I'm going to come into my brush settings. I don't actually need this to be a angled thing. I'm going to turn off shape dynamics, and transfer needs to be off as well. There we go. Also, it helps to set your spacing all the way down to 1. Saves you getting all those little dots and such. Okay, so what we're actually doing is I'm just holding shift and I'm just clicking from point to point around the wall. I'm going to be rushing over this as this is a tutorial. It does help to spend a little bit of time doing this. It really does kind of help you get an idea of what you're doing. So as you can see, I've decided that there's going to be a bit of a bevel up here and bevel around here. And we can't actually see what's going on down here, so we can just kind of sketch it in however we like, really. Okay, so just moving along the wall. Might spend about perhaps 10 minutes just sketching through this. Now, you will notice that I'm not freehand sketching. I'm actually just holding shift and I'm just clicking from point to point. Things like this, we can actually just go right around like that. As you can see, I'm not a very good drawer. I can texture, but I'm much better at just clicking. So if you are very good at concept art or drawing, for example, you might want to actually just come in and just sketch this all out. I'm sure you could do this quite quickly. For me personally, I will just be clicking from point to point, as it does just give us an idea of the actual geometry. Right, these ones here I can just freehand in a couple of dots. We will actually model in some little holes and stuff like that. Some will be textured, some will be actual holes. To give you a scale of the scene, if you haven't got this in front of you, if you're just watching the tutorial first, here is a man and here is the wall. Basically, you can see there's people down here. This scene is actually massive. These aren't, car-sized vehicles or crane-sized vehicles. These are actually, skyscraper-sized vehicles. This tutorial, this image was actually based off what's called Mortal Engines. It was inspired by Mortal Engines, I should say. So it is. If you haven't heard of that, you should probably look it up. It's actually a really interesting book. Yeah, that'll give you an idea of actually why there's things around. For example, this wall is basically made out of scrap, as we can see. And we've got things like, this is a sort of like a scorpion thing, broken scorpion. There's a leg there, it's like a broken leg there, a big tail that actually comes around and pulls down walls. We won't be going into modelling the vehicles, but I do have a couple of them there for you to just throw in your scene. Okay, so just moving along the wall. Alright, so you can kind of see how this is looking at the moment. So I've got a fair bit of detail that's just popping out here, that without it there, it's kind of hard to see where the geometry actually lies. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to pause the recording, and I'll come back instantly for you, and we'll show the finished result of how I sketched this out. Alright, so I'm back now. I've probably spent like another 5 minutes or so just quickly drawing over this. You can see I've just changed it to outlines. I've put everything in one group. So yeah, that is what we do for preparing our image. So what we can do now is perhaps turn that into a layer. Just fill this one underneath it with white, and just lower the opacity of this. And it does give you a much better representation of where these are. As you can see, I've only gone up to there. We're not going to bother about building this entire city behind here. As you can see, there's a whole lot of like shacks and broken down buildings and stuff. We're not really going to bother about that. We will make this little city in the background. I don't think that's actually a city. Actually, Josh told me that wasn't a city after I prepared this, but I quite like the idea of having a little broken down city in the background. So yeah, we'll go into making some cubes and stuff of that. And yeah, I've also quickly, as you can see, just sketched out this rock here and junk pile. That's just to signify for me that there is junk piles and rocks around here. So yeah, all of this is going to be like junk around here. We'll fill out some stuff around here. We might make some little like stalls or little shacks and stuff just outside the city. So yeah, some kind of vent there that's making all the smoke. Just kind of drew that in because you can't really see it. And I imagine you'd enter here through one of these little side vents. There might be like a little hole in the wall. We can just go in and you know, go into the city just through this little, like an eye of the needle kind of thing. Yeah, so that's kind of how I have planned to go about doing this. So what we're going to do is I'm going to save this, save as, and I'm just going to call this, now let's go design _ outlines _ version 001. Good idea to have like versions and the things. I don't tend to do it much in my tutorials because I don't intend to make another version, but as an example, yes, it is a really good idea to have versions because then you know which one you're up to. Alright, so let's just save that, and yeah, that's basically that prepared. So what we're going to do now is we're going to open up Blender. So here's the default scene in Blender. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to prepare this for what we're about to do. So namely that means closing down our timeline. We probably won't be using that at all. We need to split our window across. And there we go. And I'm going to bring up a UV image editor to which we will open up that artwork. Alright, so I'll put that in concept, shield wall, and we can just have that, lying there like that. You can also open up your one of the lines I might actually do that. I'll go File, save as, design outlines, and let's just go JPEG. Yes, design outlines, JPEG. Cool. Now we'll also we'll rename this one here to artwork, add image, open outlines, and I'll call this outlines. So we can easily just switch between our artwork and the outlines. Just like that. Now, by the way, if you are fairly new to Blender, to maximize this view, we hit Control and Up arrow, and then just Control Up arrow again, which will minimize it. So that's a quick way just to have this so we can quickly zoom in and out to it. What I find a lot of people actually do, something myself in particular, is they actually come over here. We don't really need that outliner up there. We just bring this down here to a UV image editor. Alright, so if I just get that one there, now we can actually just zoom this one out, like that. So there's our quick preview of the environment, and we can just hover over it and go Control Up, and we can zoom in as we need to. Just like that. And it's quite nice to have it just sitting down there as well. It gives us a much bigger workspace. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so let's continue setting up Blender. If we go File, User Preferences, just popped up on my other screen. There we go. Alright. So you can see we've got a few settings around here. And what we will be going is, we'll go to Input. You've got to make sure you have Continuous Grab enabled. Not so important if you have a graphics tablet, because you can't really drag past, but it is very helpful with the mouse. Right, so moving over to our add-ons, what we're going to do is just check that one for now. Is we're going to go through and we're going to add, enable the ones we feel we might use. So for example, with the Add Mesh, you might want to come in and enable the ANT landscape generator. That will be very helpful for generating terrain and backgrounds. We may not use it in this tutorial, but it's good to have it turned on. Likewise with the extra objects, pipe joints, and regular solids. Those ones there are helpful for when we're doing things like creating junk. We can just add in a pipe joint and edit it to our needs. So I'm just going to turn those ones on as well. So we can turn all of those on. It doesn't slow down Blender much, enabling a whole bunch of add-ons. It just means when we go Shift A to add something, we get all these options down here. See, so we can go extra objects, we can just add in, for example, a gear, and that would add in a gear like that. And most of these have options. For example, if I add in a pipe elbow, we have things like the angle and such like that. Cool. Back to the user preferences. Other things we're going to want to turn on is in Paint. We're going to want to turn on Paint Palettes and Texture Layer Manager. So those ones there are very helpful for texture painting. We're going to be doing quite a bit of that. Probably won't need any of these other ones at the moment. Mesh B surfaces is quite handy, as is inset polygon. Once again, we probably won't use them, but if you want to know what those do, then go ahead and look them up. Okay, so that is our add-ons. One other thing I'm going to do is, you can see over here that we have different themes. For example, I like to use the Energy version 6. You can download this from a website, which I think I pulled up. One moment. Yep, there it is. Alright, so if you go to studiollb.wordpress.com, and you can actually download this theme there. This is very helpful when working on large projects, as it makes you much more, a darker theme makes you much more immersed in actually what you're doing, rather than trying to find your way around the layout. It is good to know the original Blender theme, but by all means change the theme to your liking. This is one that I quite like to use. It's probably the most popular theme at the moment, so I'll be using this one for this tutorial, and you might want to try it out as well. Okay, now moving over to File, we have this option here for Image Editor. This one here is where you want to find the image editor of your choice. For example, I'm going to be using Photoshop. So if I find Photoshop CS6, Photoshop.exe, select that, accept, and now when we go into edit our images, it will automatically open it up in Photoshop for us. You can also do things such as choosing your temporary directory and such like that. Okay, now over on System, if you have having problems displaying your things in your viewport, you might want to change this one here over to perhaps overlap or triple buffer or something like that. All of these work differently in different scenarios. If you're having trouble in your viewport, you might want to change this window draw method. Alright, so that's it for our user settings. Now what we do is we click Save as Default, and we are now all set up to go. It will actually remember these on all our projects. Still got that there, but that's not much of an issue. If you want to reset your settings, you just go File and go Load Factory Settings, and it will pop back to that. As you can see, that energy theme is much better. Alright, let's go New. Yes, start a file. There we go. Maybe I didn't remember them. Alright, so let's just go find, let's go File, Open, that one. Just get this back to what it was. When you're opening files, by the way, if you don't want it to change your layout, you just uncheck Load UI. Sort of. Alright, image open. In our concept, we'll open up our outlines. Call this one here Outlines. Open up our original concept, and we'll call this one here Concept. Okay, so now that's there for us to use as we wish. Cool, so that's going to wrap up this video, and we'll come back in the next section. We'll tackle an introduction to modeling for games. Okay, so now in part 2 of the tutorial, we're going to be taking a look at modeling for games. Now, modeling for games and modeling for production is slightly different. It's similar, but it is slightly different. When it comes to modeling for games, we have quite a bit of restriction. So we're restricted by our actual physical size of the object, the poly count, the textures, where UVs, sort of there's quite a few little restrictions that come into play. The main one though is the poly count. Now, modeling for a game our objects generally have to be as low poly as possible while keeping a high level of detail. Now that is achieved by using bump maps and specular maps and diffuse maps. So instead of actually having a full procedural texture, we actually have it already pre-calculated. So pre-calculated shadows, pre-calculated ambient occlusion, and all that sort of stuff, so that it can run in real time. Good way to think about how it does actually slow down the system is if we have, for example, a crate, a wooden crate, that there might be 500 polygons, which is a reasonable amount for a game engine. But if we have 2,000 of those stacked up, we then have 2,000 times 500. So that there would then be the same as, or it'd be a little bit more than having one 10,000 poly crate, but basically we then have 10,000 polygons in our scene that our gamer has to render in real time. So our limits for a computer these days is, I believe it's somewhere around 1 million polygons on the scene at any one time. Game engines actually run a lot faster than your viewport for several different reasons, but yeah, we generally try and keep well under that threshold. We want to keep it as low as possible. When I made this environment in preparation, I ended up with, I think, about 60,000 polygons over the entire scene, and that worked perfectly fine. I feel I could have taken that all the way up to 300,000 and still had it work on my netbook. So yeah, we definitely have room for extra polygons where we need them, but we do want to keep them as low as possible. Okay, so what we have here is we have a cube. So what I'm going to do is I want to add in some detail. I want to add a box cut out of the corner. So I'm going to add in a edge loop there. Perhaps it's a long box cut, something like this. Yeah. Alright. So if I go extrude this, actually need to change that over to vertex. Alright. And I just fill in this hole like that. There we go, we have a little notch in the corner. Now let's add in another one. So say for example I need a little one down here. I can come in and I now have a little slot. So nice quick way to actually come in and put it in. So I'm just going to hit Control T and we can now go Control E, come and go rotate edge, rotate edge. Alright. Alright, we get something like that. Actually, I want these facing the other way. Right, Control E, rotate edge, there we go. Hit them the right way around the first time. Alright, and then just fill in these faces. Okay, so now we have a notch on that side and a notch in this side. Now that's all fine and dandy. This looks fine, this would run in a game engine. But we have 54 faces on this cube. If I tessellate this by pressing Ctrl T, we have 108 triangles. That is how many triangles is being rendered. No matter if they are quads or triangles, they will always render as triangles. That's just what our GPU processes. So what we need to do is we need to be able to compress this down as much as possible. Now the best way to do this is to just smush these into as little space as possible. So there is a couple of different ways that we can actually get rid of these polygons here. Now, one way that gets used quite often is that we just select a edge loop. This is my favourite way for getting rid of a whole bunch at once. We can just select an edge loop around there, edge slide all the way up, select everything, go remove doubles. And that will just get rid of that whole loop around there. Okay, so other options is we can actually use the knife tool, and we can come in and we can split through something like, for example, a cut across there, and we'll just come in and move these to fit. Just fill that in. And yeah, just cutting with the knife tool actually works quite well as well. We can also just move things one by one. And that's quite a nice way of doing things. Kind of getting a bit messy now, but that's not a worry. Just move these across. You notice we're getting quite a build-up of triangles. Triangles are not your friend in most of the case. In games, you can use triangles. It's not going to harm anything. Everything will still work the way it should. But what is harming is the position of the triangles. So we want to keep the size of each one relatively the same. We want to keep them as close to being consistent as we can. So I'm just going to come through and just clear out all these polygons. Alright. So you can see here we now have no unnecessary vertices. There's no vertex that moving it along its plane will affect the size or affect the look of the mesh. Moving along its plane will not affect the mesh. Wait, opposite. Never mind. What I'm trying to say is basically all of these, when we move them, it affects the shape. Whereas if we had, for example, an edge loop through here, we can move this up and down, and it's not going to affect the shape of the mesh. We move this one here up along these two axes, and it won't affect the shape of the mesh. But what we really want is we want to have this perhaps coming across here and just have a quad along there. We want to have same along there and just generally tidy it up. Now, there's a few different ways. We can just use the knife tool. We can select a face, Control T, and then fill in these like this, which you can see gives us nice quads. We can do various things like that. My favourite way for just clearing all these out is just delete the faces on one side, and then just come in and fill them up whichever way I want. That's my personal favourite way. So come in here, and I would select these. Make a nice face coming through there. And you can see I've already got two triangles here that can just be filled in like that. And last one, let's just go Control T on here. Oh, no, maybe it wasn't the last one. Okay, so that is now sorted, and if I tessellate this, we now have 36. I think we had like 108 or something before, I can't remember, but you can see this is a lot lower polygon count than what we had before. Now it looks a little funny having edge loops that go around like this and this, but that doesn't really matter for games. I mean, it's actually quite nice to have an edge loop that goes around like that there, or around there. But what you can see is these faces, they're actually all roughly the same size. That is what's important when it comes to UV unwrapping and such. So yeah, that's how we cut down on our poly count. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to split this across and go UV image editor. I know I have a UV image editor down there, but that's just our reference one. We want an actual UV image editor as well. Okay, so for UV unwrapping, we can go U, we can go Smart UV Project, and if we just go New UV Test Grid, let's go Shading. If I just come over to the Blender Render, we change this over to GLSL and Textured Solid. Here's my, here we go. So you can see this is what a automatic projection does. It gets you pretty much perfect UVs. They are fantastic. I mean, you can see the seams. You're not going to see the seams when you texture it, provided you're texturing in Texture Paint and not Photoshop. But yeah, I mean, it does a really good job just for a straight projection. Another thing we can do is we can actually come in and we can mark our scenes manually. Say, for example, I wanted to cut out these and so cut them out like that and basically have everything else fold like a box. So we would have around there, this one, let's go, not that one, this one. Unwrapping a box, by the way, can be quite confusing, but hey, there you go. So we've got it kind of folding around with wings, coming around there, comes right around to the tail. So Control E, mark scene, U, unwrap, and we end up with something like this, which as you can see, it's just like one of those boxes, but it's very nicely packed. I think I might have missed a seam there. Yep, I did. Alright, so just come here, Control A, Control P, it'll pack everything in and make things look nice. Alright, so that is a much cleaner UV, isn't it? You can see along here we get a few things that look a little distorted, just along here. That is due to these not being perfectly straight. Blender doesn't by default make things straight up and down. You can actually come in and you can just go, if I zoom out a little, select this one, SX0, select the other side. It's not giving me a, there we go, into the tool. Alright, so this one here, SX0, and this one down here, SY0. And you see that straightens it out quite a bit. We've still got this one down here, isn't straight. You have to come in and flatten these out manually for some of these. So yeah, you can actually just come in and you can flatten everything out, and that will give you perfect UVs, especially things like this. That looks horrible. You might want to actually add in a single seam on each of these. You unwrap, and that would flatten that out for you. Okay, so that is UV unwrapping. In a nutshell, it's exactly the same as UVA unwrapping for production. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to UV map. We call this one here default. Something like that. If I just go uncheck texture solid, we just go textured view, add in perhaps a Hemi lamp. Love the Hemi lamp, so just very good even flat lighting. Okay, so if we go image new, something like that, it's just going to be a ambient occlusion bake for us. What we do is we come in and we go to bake down here. Let's call this ambient occlusion. Check normalized. Normalized just means that our material that we have set to this object won't affect our bake. Very important. Click bake. And it's just going to bake out a UV map for us. Okay, so now in our material settings, we go add in a new texture, image or movie. Set that to be this one. Align to our UVs. Alright, so that is our UVs. But now, if we want to add in something else here, something a little bit, something more, perhaps a UV test grid, let's add in one of those. Alright, so we'd go create a new one, image or movie, let's just select that UV grid there, and mapping will be UV. And I'm just going to set this to be multiply. So this one needs to be multiply as well. Okay, so there we go, we've got a UV test grid. I just come in here to our UVs. Now what happens if we want this to be bigger? We want this, we want these tiles to be smaller, so we want this to be bigger. We scale this up. You can see that's not going to work for us very well, is it? Now that's because of our ambient occlusion map. So the way we fix this is we come in here, see we've got that default layout there. We will select our ambient occlusion one, we'll select default for that. We will add in a new UV map and we'll call this one here tile. Alright, so in this, let's select our checker, select tile for that. And you've just got to exit and enter edit mode again. Alright, so we select our tile and we scale that up to whatever we want. As you can see, we now get that scaling and we get our ambient occlusion map working in the areas it should. So we've got these two UV maps. So we can even come in and edit these. They don't have to be the same. So say for example, this one here needs to be a bit different size, something like that. And the other side, yeah, it's fine like that. So yeah, that is how we work with multiple UVs. So that's it for this quick introduction to modeling for games. Stay tuned for the next video where we will cover texturing for games. Welcome to part 3 of this first stage. We are now going to be covering texture painting in Blender. Now recently in the 2.6 series, Blender's been bringing some crazy good tools to the table. One of those is texture painting. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be painting our little cube here. And we're just going to set up a nice way to do it. So if we just move this across, so we've got a nice UV map here to look at. What we need to do is we need to go from object mode into texture paint. Now if you followed the introduction tutorial, we will have, you'll already have all of our layer management tools there. So what we have down here in the properties panel, which can be open and closed with N, or this is also referred to as the N menu, namely by the key that we press to open it. What we can do is we can just come in and we can add in a color. So we add in a color there, we can actually just come and paint on our object. And that is cool. Something to note, make sure you have default checked. If we have tile, you can see it just changes it and it looks just funky. So yeah, we can paint on like that. We can change our color over here. We have a standard draw. We also have a smear, a soften, and a clone. We might use clone a bit, but generally we just use draw. It's the most common one, and it works well. Okay, so coming down, we have texture. So we can come and select any texture we want. If I just click new, and we come in and add in that new texture, texture 002. I'm just going to call this one here brush. Great. Now if we just uncheck that one, we can just have it sitting there and it will work alright. So I go image or movie, we just come in and click open. I'm just going to come to my texture folder, my brushes, and what I've done is I've converted not all of my brushes, but a few hundred of them into images. I should probably organize these at some point. And we can just choose this, and we can just choose whatever brush we want. So if I open up one of them, you can see I'm now painting with that texture. I just come across and go show alpha. Go. So the cool thing about this is we can actually control our colors via ramps for our textures. So over here you can see I can set this to blue. It's painting in black. Now a lot of people were wondering why is it painting in black. I don't understand this. It's not making any sense. Basically it uses our texture. It doesn't use these settings. It uses our texture. So I can come down. I can click ramp. And I can change this color, the end color, to whatever I want. Say such as blue. Change this one, something perhaps like red. Bring them a little closer together. And that is now a brush. So we're painting blue and red. Hey, look at that. Now I know it looks a little funny at the moment. We can fix that by just adjusting our spacing down. Now 1% by the way is very slow, I forgot to mention. So let's just set that to perhaps 5%. And you can see it goes like that. Alright. So that is looking quite nice. You can just kind of go around and paint whatever you like. You can add in brush textures. You can use any image you like. This is not an ABR brush file. This is an image file, which works well. Okay, airbrush. That one there. Basically, you can just press and hold, and it will do that. Let's just add in a few more interesting colors. So in the middle, I'm just going to go bump the alpha up. That's such like a green. There we go, it's kind of like a rainbowy look. Alright. So yeah. Change that up to put that up to 10 again. Just makes it a little bit faster. Okay, so curve, that's the fall off curve. If I remove our image from there, you can see I can paint in loops. Just turn off the airbrush. And yeah, that is basically how a fall off curve works. It's just adjust the fall off of our brush. Project paint, these are the settings you want. Now you can see here you've got like the normal, I can paint across like that with normal off. With it on, I can't. So leave it off. That's just, yeah. There is a reason why it's there, but we're not going to go into that. Change my brush so I can be painting. Now colouring, this one here is quite important. It basically means if you are looking at the back side of a face, if you're working on a single-sided plane and you rotate around to the back and you can't paint on it, it's because you've got colour on. I generally turn that off so I can just paint on it, so I can actually just go zoom inside and I can paint. If I turn colour back on, I can't paint. No. So yeah, leaving colour off is quite good. It's very interesting, isn't it? Inside the box. Alright, so occlude. Occlude is also a very important one. Occlude means I can come in and I can just go paint it all the way across the bottom here, and it goes all the way through. So I bring up a new colour to demonstrate that point, such as pink, the favourite colour of Blender users. Yeah, you can see it kind of paints through. You can see it's bigger on that side than this side. That is because if I zoom in, small, it is now big on that side. That's because I'm in perspective. If I go out of perspective, it's the same size. Okay, so that's occlude. Leave it on most of the time. Bleed, I will tell you now, leave bleed at 2. If you want to know what bleed actually just extends the texture outside of the UV boundary. So if you want to know more about the bleed and stuff, I have actually got a tutorial on my website and my YouTube channel, so you can check that out if you want. Go to blendernation.com. They post a lot of cool stuff on there. My videos on there as well. So yeah, that's Introduction to Texture Painting, that one's called. So that goes over all these other features that we won't be using in this tutorial. Now quick edit. Quick edit is something we will probably be using. If I just come into, say, a random angle like this, if I go, actually, no, let's just go to the side. Just paint on the side. And there we go. Should go quick edit. And we click that, and it will open it up in Photoshop. So I can now come in and go, hi. Oh, that's upside down exclamation mark. There we go. Sorry about. So we just do this. And one thing I forgot to do is just undo that with Control Alt Z. Alright, as you create a new layer. Alright, yeah, there we go. And maybe a little smiley on the side. Alright, so you can see we've got like the camera in here, we've got the light angle. This is just a screenshot of Blender. So what we do is we just take that off now. We just delete this layer 0, save it, and if we minimize this and come back into Blender, we can click onto apply. Pop, there you go. Now you can't just move around to an angle and click apply again, it doesn't work. It's one of those things. So you can just type in something that can just, you can paint in Photoshop really. Paint on something in Photoshop, bring it back in. It's kind of similar to how Murray works if you've used Murray. I like to use Murray because it works like that, but basically it's all in the same program. So you can paint on it and then it projects, you paint, you project, you paint, you project. It's all in the one program. But yeah, Blender actually does that quite well, but it integrates directly with Photoshop. Alright, so you got a few more things in here. So you got color palette. This one here is just, doesn't have any of my presets in there. But yeah, basically what that is it's just a quick color palette. Exactly as it says. Load brush images. You can actually load in ABR files and have it convert them into images. That's up to you if you want to use that. I have mine already converted to images. So yeah, I can come in and select that. We can come over and go to, where's my image? Image, there we go. Open up something else. Perhaps we'll go to this one, and that will adjust it accordingly. Yeah, something like that. So you kind of get the idea of how texture painting works. Once we have it all done, we can click Save Paint Layers. Oh, one other thing, let's add in a bump. what we do with bump is we reset that, bring it up. Bump is basically we paint in bump maps. Oh, look at that, that is gorgeous. It's not a normal map, it is a bump map. Just to make that clear. So yeah, we can just paint these bumps all over it. You can see it does a really good job, especially if you've already got an image there. And Blender actually does protrude it from the surface quite well. So yeah, you can see we do actually have all these here, and you can look at them, you can save them out if you like. I just realised that I've got this set to a colour ramp over there. We actually want them to be black and white, so you get stuff like this. So just put that up to like white, take strength down. Yes, there we go. And yeah, paint. If you want to go the other way, put it on black. And you can see it just comes up over there. We can actually come over here and paint on here as well, if you so wish. But unless you have some way of telling which bit goes where, it's going to start looking odd. So yeah, we now have a very graffiti cube, and that is kind of how texture painting works in Blender. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and we're actually going to start blocking out our scene in the next stage.